And also, today at 3 o'clock at the Jean Torres Golf Course is our only home cross-country meet of the season. And so it just happens to coincide with homecoming week. So head over and support our NMHU runners in their only home meet. All right, and I am pleased to introduce our next HU Talk presenter, Dr. Eric Romero. Dr. Romero teaches in the Department of Languages and Culture and is involved in the President's Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and has been at Highlands for 28 years. Please welcome Dr. Romero as he presents his HU Talk on La Matanza, a New Mexico food sharing and cultural tradition.
Muy buenos días, le de Dios. Quedo ante ustedes su humilde servidor Eric Romero a sus órdenes. Good morning, I am your humble servant Eric Romero at your service. And we're going to be talking about food. So I'm glad you mentioned that there's edible books going on and such, but you know, food is always on everybody's mind, I'm sure. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to get started with a land acknowledgement. And this acknowledgement is the Highlands Land Acknowledgement as developed by the President's Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We acknowledge that we are on the ancestral territories of indigenous nations, including the 19 Pueblos, the Apache, the Comanche, the Dene, the Kiowa, and the Ute. We pay our respect to elders both past and present. We also recognize that these peoples were displaced to accommodate others in the name of progress. With humility, we recognize and respect all indigenous peoples, their histories, and their types of land. Reconocemos que estas tierras antes pertenecían a las tribus Tanoa, incluso los pueblos Tiwa del Norte, los Dene, los Apache, Kiowa y los Comanche. Mostramos nuestros respetos a los ancianos del pasado y del presente. También reconocemos a aquellas personas desplazadas en nombre del progreso colonizador. Con humildad reconocemos y respetamos a la población indígena, sus historias y sus conexiones a la tierra. And as I mentioned, a lot of institutions, public institutions, state institutions are starting to do this land acknowledgement, not only in a manner of recognizing indigenous peoples as part of the bigger history, but couched in this idea that it's within our interest to understand the stories of our landscape. And it's becoming more and more important for community building, for community development, for many different kinds of aspects to recognize if you come into a community, understand the history, understand the place narratives and become part of it. You don't become part of a community unless you understand its history, its story, and its knowledge. And we're hoping that Highlands as an institution embraces this idea and we continue further into understanding local tradition, local culture, local knowledge, local heritage, and make it available and viable for all students that come here to the university and for our community at large. So I wanted to start off with that and also kind of make the suggestion that we're going to talk about La Matanza today as an event, a historical, a traditional event. And I would like to suggest and make this very extended suggestion that says when you know the history of an event, when you know the history of a recipe or a food preparation, it tastes better. There's a stronger grounding. There's meaning that goes for it, and meaning goes into so many different ways, and not only from that phenomenological aspect that you experience that, but if you experience something that has a history behind it, it certainly has a better flavor. So we're going to talk about the Matanza, and we have some images. I apologize, this is a non-vegan, non-vegetarian presentation. My wife suggests to me that I could frame it that it is gluten-free, but we're going to be talking about the tradition. And I could make it into a more developed academic presentation and speak about the history of the Matanza. So I wanted to cover a few aspects of that and then give a little bit of the history of the tradition as it takes place here at Highlands University and within our surrounding communities. So La Matanza, again, in a very general pedestrian sense, is a slaughtering and a cooking of an animal. It could be sheep or goat, more often than not within our communities in northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. It's a pig. And again, I do have some graphic images, so a heads up. There's no sound attached to it, but there is some blood in the images that we're going to be looking at. But again, this tradition is like many, it's a demonstration of a tapestry of different cultural traditions coming together. And here in New Mexico, because we do witness, we are blessed with looking at the vestiges of many different cultural traditions. This is truly one of these ideas of a mestizo tradition, a Native American, Iberian, European tradition. Now, it's European tradition as far as the Spanish and the Iberians go, going way back to the 12th century when there was Celtic influences. The Celts were in Spain and brought pigs and cattle and such. The Spanish adopted it into their cuisine, into their cooking methodologies. And this is around the same time that Islam, Moorish, the state of Islam, as represented by the Moors, they were in Spain for 700 years. So during that time, the Matanza tradition, particularly when there was a cooking of a pig, a hog, it was an act of resistance against the Moorish influence in Spain, because within their religious tradition, pork is prohibited. Okay, so it goes back and it has this idea of a resistance. What we want to frame it from is really understanding how it's developed, and through the history of New Mexico and Colorado, it's developed out to be emblematic of many of the traditions and many of the value systems that are inherent within our smaller communities. And so I wanted to again start off with this anchor of saying, this is a cultural tradition with deep roots. And the deep roots, if we look at the meaning behind those deep roots, again, once we get to chicharrón and carnitas and baked beans, it's a lot more flavorful because you understand how this not only the process, but also the tradition, the heritage. So in particular, I wanted to emphasize some key value systems, and I'll go over these individually. So first and foremost, I want to mention the idea of mutualidad, mutualism, which is a very characteristic value within our communities of people working and collaborating together, not only as evidenced by the history of what are called mutual aid societies, but the idea that our communities, they come together in helping one another. That's a true sense of community when you have that sense of collaboration and mutual aid to one another. Another concept is the idea of convivencia. And that, I guess that could be translated as celebration, that we have fun, we party hard. I'm not making that as a suggestion to the students that are here. But we do have celebration, and part of that celebration has the intention of community building as well. So think of the Matanza as, again, a celebratory act in the sense that we're pulling people together to do a lot of again, so mutualidad, convivencia, repartimiento. Repartimiento, again, is also one of these very key components, which speaks about a sharing mechanism that the communities, the rural communities, the agricultural, pastoral communities have a history of sharing food, of sharing responsibility, of doing those levels of annual, seasonal types of repartimiento. And one in particular, if you're familiar with the terminology, it's called the cambalache. And I guess it would be equitable to be calling it an Oktoberfest or harvest celebration, when people bring their foodstuffs from their agricultural intentions and from their pastoral activities and come together and do this kind of level of sharing on a regular manner. Now, in many of our smaller communities, this idea of the Matanza, it's not just a fall event or a unique once in a season activity. How it used to take place is a family would do a sheep, a cow, a pig, a goat, and there would be that kind of Matanza celebration that people would come together. 2 weeks later, another family within that network would do something similar. And then a couple of weeks later, somebody else, maybe somebody got an elk that year, maybe somebody got a deer that year, or a coyote wandered too close to the pit. I'm sorry. But anyway, so these different entities would, at a community level, at a family level, at an extended family network level, they would do that. So there would be continuous sharing, because this goes back to way before there was refrigeration and electric apparatus. No freezers, and again, the traditions of land-based culture did a lot of problem solving. And one of the problem solving was to have fresh meat every couple of weeks by people coming together and doing that kind of level of sharing. Again, another one of the key values that we want to anchor is the idea of caridad, charity. Because as part of the Matanza, there was a concerted effort, a designed effort to make sure that everybody got foodstuffs, and whoever wasn't there, you sent that out to the neighbors. I tell the story within my immediate family. I was at corredor. And in corredor, you could translate, say, I was the runner, right? And the runner was the idea that within my family, when we ate and when we butchered an animal or such, it had maybe a smaller matanza, etc. We wanted to make sure that Vecina Juana and La Viuda Esther received a portion. So even though if they didn't make it into the Matanza event itself, I would take them a plate. And it was pretty cool because my older brother used to tease me and say, you're the gopher, you have to go for everything. You have to run in. And it wasn't until we were teenagers, I told him how pleasant it was, because whenever I would show up at a house with one of the extra plates, some of the leftover food that we had available, they would feed me as well. So there was always something, you come in, sit down, and they would have conserva de capulin, requesón, some cheeses, some jellies and such. And so for me, it was meaningful being part of the community. And this is the kind of idea that for students coming to Highlands, we want them to understand this deep, rich, community level culture that we have in many of our different communities and such. And the last one that I'm sure you're all familiar, the concept of querencia. It's became almost a market and a brand name for many of our communities in New Mexico. Querencia, you could translate as place identity or land stewardship. Of course, in the class, we're working a lot with that. I'll introduce. These are students that are in the introduction Native American Hispano Cultural Studies. So they know this stuff, and we'll call upon them for question and answer once we finish. But this bigger idea of querencia, again, land stewardship, it's really an anchoring. It's how do you figure yourself? How do you see as part of the place? Not only from the idea of civic engagement, but again, my suggestion is you make your story part of it. You recognize the stories that preceded you, and you anchor and you bring yourself into those stories as well. So here at Highlands, we started this tradition maybe almost about 20 years ago. Mr. Aragon is in the audience. Carol, they've been here long enough to recognize that. The Matanza, we had done a few of these maybe 18, 19, 20 years ago. And that's when we had President Manny Aragon, and he wanted to bring in that cultural heritage aspect. And right now we're reiterating this idea of really coming strong in understanding food tradition. Many of you might have participated last Friday. We did a chili roast. Typically, Leon Bustos here did the coordination. Thank you to him. And typically with that, we also roast corn, the kind of corn that you make chicos out of it. And we do ristartain. There's a lot of food tradition fun that we're having. And there at the cultural part, we actually have a traditional Three Sisters garden that we planted. And corn grew to 8 feet this year, and I should have incorporated an image. We did some harvesting of the corn, different kinds of corn, but it was a traditional Three Sisters garden, corn, beans, and squash. You're all familiar with that. That's the foundation of our diet here in New Mexico. So some of the images are from the Matanzas of the past, and some of them also are going to demonstrate the construction of the cultural part. And so again, please consider I'm doing this as a presentation, but the better part of it is an invitation for you to come and eat with us and do some tasks, do some work with us within 3 weeks, as we're going to organize our New Mexico Highlands. Matanza is going to be the 20th and the 21st of October. So we're about 3 weeks away. We're hustling to make sure things are in place, because we all know very well, the parts that need to come into place. So within that larger history, we had done some of these several years ago. We're doing a reiteration, a reinvigoration. And I got to mention that we have a student organization here on campus called Mecha. And for several years, the collaboration between the Native American Club and the Mecha Club, and actually some of the students from Conservation Club, and when we had political science student organization, they all participated. So you're going to see some of the images of the matanzas that we did off campus. When we did the ones off campus, they were more accurate and more proximal to what a true matanza would be, because we had a live animal that we slaughtered and butchered and prepared within a 2-day period. And so some of the imagery is going to demonstrate that. Now here at Highlands, the one that we do as our biennial event is a little bit more restricted, because it being a public service or a public invitation, we adhere to the standards of environmental protection and safety criteria for food handlers. So we don't get to do the slaughter and the butchering ourselves. Our meat comes in, and you're going to see some images of the meat came in, the carcass that came in from a slaughterhouse, a mobile slaughterhouse that came in to attend to us when we did the matanza a couple of years ago. So again, please consider it as an invitation. We have a lot of fun. There's a lot of work involved, and we have a core team. You're going to recognize some of the people in the photographs and such. And so it's a 2-day event as we do it here on campus. The first day is preparation for an overnight cooking using a big pit. And some of the images that you see are spectacular images of the fires that we built. Several fires going on, several cooking fires going on at the same time. And again, a lot of coordination, a lot of investment on the part of our volunteer team. And again, we pretty much pit cook 700 pounds of roast, and we do 600 pounds of chicharron. And with that, the last time we fed about 600 people. 4 years ago, I think we calculated we fed 700. This year, we're preparing on feeding 1,000. So again, in doing that as a community event, we really ask for help. There's a lot of work many of you have participated. So I'll let me introduce Shane Flores and work on this. It's not academic. We're not giving recognition of all the photographs. We've pulled them from different sources. Leon did a bunch of the photography as well. My appreciation. Some of them, we have a couple of them from Julie Sussman, Mr. Solomon, that had done some of the flyover photography. Well, I'm going to take an author's privilege, and as we're going through this, we may stop for me to explain a couple of the images. But I ask you as well, let's make this a discussion. If you want clarification on the image, if you want an explanation, please interrupt. Or if you want to make comment, please. I'm already a little bit dry mouth from talking. I want to let the images speak for themselves, but I wanted to anchor that idea that this is tradition. This is deep-rooted tradition. Understand the meaning of the tradition, and therefore you get to contribute to it and add your story to the bigger trajectory of storytelling within our New Mexico and Southern Colorado community.
Do you prefer to have the lights off in the room to see this better? People on Zoom will see your images there.
Yeah, at least this side here, please. Thank you. And I'm going to actually use some technology. This is the limitation of my technology. Actually, Shane, please go ahead. Oh, okay, this is an overhead image of the one that we did 4 years ago. And that was at the stadium. So this is the pit. Shane, could we do individual slides, or is it?
I can pause on each one, just tell me when to pause, so I'll stay there.
Yeah, can we do a stop one? And I think this one was 12 minutes, right?
Yeah.
This was the first sequence, the shorter one. Shane's a technological whiz that I depend on. So again, these were the chicharron. This is a cooking area, a big chicharron pot. Smaller ones that year, I think eventually we did 6 or 7. This is the pit, a metal roof. And this was from the previous construction done 20 years ago under the tenure of Manny Aragon. But we used this pit 4 years ago when we reintroduced the idea of the Matanza. So again, this was I think second day activity. because we were already bringing meat out of the ground and starting to feed people. Shane, please.
Okay.
Food line for me. And we had a stage in place with some beautiful entertainment that we did get Shakira that year, but I'm still hoping we might. This is the beginning of the construction of the present cultural park. So we did have to do a hand dig like they used that we did traditionally. We cheated a little bit and used the Volvo shovel.
No bodies, right?
Nothing there. No, we didn't find any. So these are some of the images of the match of Matanza. Again, they're a little bit mixed in here as far as making sense of it. So this is kind of what one of the typical Matanzas may look like, because this is the Mecha Matanza, and I'm sure you recognize that. Please. Assembly line work, as always. We use that scaffolding to hang the pig and do what's necessary. Stop, Shane, let me explain this one. So in this one, in a typical matanza, you slaughter your animal and you have to shave it. And part of the technique in the shaving is you're boiling a big vat of water, you can't see it here, and then you use the burlap sacks that are very hot, boiling water, place it on the pig itself, the hairy pig, to loosen up the bristle, to moisture the hair, so you could do a shaving with it. And I think we have a couple of images in here of the volunteers and the participants shaving the pig. So it's a lot of work. We even designed that one person as a mayordomo is responsible for sharpening the knife. So there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of activity that takes place with it. That's one of the organizing teams. That was a 450-pound pig right there. We did it in April and we did it in the snow, which is actually a viable time because you want to do your matanzas during cool season because pork spoils very quickly in the heat. Again, I mentioned this, there's some graphic nature to this. And during the process, we had to eat and feed ourselves. We cheated. So these are some smaller pits in comparison with the ones that we do at Highlands. The Highlands Matanza, we burn almost 3 cords of wood in preparing the chicharron and preparing the pit. So you recognize that's a lot of wood, that's a lot of energy, a lot of heat. We have to be very careful with the physics of the pit itself. 2 years ago, when we did the Matanza, we actually bent the frame, the metal frame, because we had it a little bit too high. It reached a temperature of 1400 degrees as calculated by the local fire department. So that's the process right there of shaving the pig. And it's a lot of work. You need a very sharp knife. And it could be dangerous. Well, for that reason, we really emphasize safety as one of our underlying principles as well. Now, these two, this was their first matanza, so they had to be tainted with pig blood on their cheeks, as according to tradition. Like I mentioned, within the course of a single day, we pretty much cut up the pig. So I'm not sure if we have any of the images. We would do goat and sheep as part of the Mecha Matanza as well. Another image of the collaborating team. So this is part of the construction of the new cultural park. This is old cultural park. This is the Matanza from 4 years ago. Stacks of meat. Let me address this, Shane. So one of the foundational ideas of what we're working with when we do the fire is, again, the Matanza is a mestizo mixed Native American Hispanic tradition. And we incorporate a lot of Native American principles in this, including a fire blessing. So we bless our fire before. And one of the things that we've been doing on many of our different activities is we're tied in with Tiwa Women United. And I'll tell you, I was blessed with being given a sack of what's called sacred ash. And the ash is what we use with our blessing. We throw ash, we do a smudge blessing on our first fire. And part of that ash that we use is considered to be 100 generation ash that has been passed on by people for at least 100 generations. You think about that being quite an amount of time, is being able to calculate how that many generations. So the ash from this fire then becomes part of that sacred ash. So when we're finished, when you want to come by and you want to carry that tradition, carry some ash with you from the pit or from the chicharron, that is sacred ash. And again, the idea behind it is that you receive, if you utilize the ash from generations prior to you, you're blessed with the tidings and the blessings and the wisdom of those that have preceded you. So again, it's a continuity within this tradition, and we're part of that tradition as well. So again, we use these are my eagle feathers, and we use a sage that we grew here locally. Please, thank you, Shane. And then we cheat. So last Matanza, we did 6 pots, 2 copper, 2 brass, and 2 cast iron. And again, some of this imagery is spectacular. Some before and after for chicharron. And what we do is when we're cooking, we invite people to come in with their family recipes or their orientations of how they understand the cooking process and their stories again. So the whole celebration is a storytelling, narrative formation celebration.
Yeah, just really quick to interject, it was interesting doing this because it became a sort of a Chicharronista summit. You know, we had like 4 different people who had 4 very different ways of making chicharrones. And all of them right, none of them wrong, but debate on size of the chicharron, which order to do things, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it was pleasant rather than antagonistic.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we could argue about recipes as to what the best recipe is, but there was a beautiful sharing.
Very good information.
Who makes the best green chili?
Not Colorado.
I know that's where grandma was at.
Hey.
Oh, we burn a high density, a hot wood oak. And again, that's part of the physics of the pit. When people come around, you know, we give those explanations, not only the sharing of the different kind of recipes, but particularly with the pit cook, you know, we invite people to come in, look at the pit, watch the fire behind the banisters, behind the rails, so that again we emphasize safety. Again, that fire gets hot. the fire marshal came in and measured it at, calibrated it at 1400 degrees.
You're gonna see fire images come again. They all represent the different layers of fire. So that one's the bottom, the absolute bottom layer that you just saw was the first layer of fire. So it's not, it won't be below for sure.
And again, in this particular occasion, we had the butcher drive up to the site of the Matanza. It was very convenient. And so it was a short workshop on butchery. And in many of our communities, that's one of the skill sets that's a matter of pride, is that you learn how to butcher early on. That way you could contribute. This is the assembly work that takes place on the Friday evening. Many of you that are here did contribute to that. Now, how we prepare our meats, and again, there's 101 ways to cook a pig, and we ask for comment and suggestions. But we've adhered to a particular cooking process that we've been doing for years and years, and it's worked well for us. So we prepare the roast, do adobo, do dressings, and prepare them in different manners. Then we wrap them in 6 to 7 layers of aluminum, then wrapped in Egyptian cotton bed sheets. And then we wrap them and place them in burlap sacks and drop them into the pit. Well, we don't drop them into the pit like that they would burn. So we'll explain a little bit. Now, again, there's some heat generated from this. We have to be very careful and very cautious when we're approaching the pit. Those are what the meat bundles look like. They're about 20 to 30 pounds each. Mr. Naya has a full turkey feather. And so once we've developed what we consider to be a significant amount of embers, then we place the laja, the latones, what are these called? The corrugated sheet metal. We start placing them on there, then we cover it to make sure that all the embers are enclosed. So we use a wet sand to cover the corrugated sheets. Place the roast as bags on top of the sand. Cover the roasts with sand. And then do another level of corrugated sheet metal. Sand on top, and a second fire on the very top. Then we close it for the night and we let it sit for about 14 hours. With the anticipation that the roasts are going to be done. And again, like I say, there's a physics of cooking here, and to make a mistake, we mess up the event big. So the last time 2 years ago when we did the Matanza, this was the newly constructed pit. Okay, hold on down right there. Please, if we can. If not, it's good. Okay, so that was the eventual crew that stood around until 11 o'clock when we were finishing up on Friday night. My appreciation, congratulations to those that were able to stay till the end of that night. A lot of work. There's Senora Romero. Then we get up on the second day and come to another level of cooking with the chicharron. I mentioned earlier the idea of both the cambalache and the repartimiento. And as part of a typical matanza, this is what happens as well. Besides eating on that particular day, there may be leftovers. And part of the leftovers are the manteca. And we don't throw our manteca, we save our manteca. We give it to community members that ask for it because again, there's your tamales, there's your bizcochitos. And if you do take a bag, we ask you to make sure and pay a little bit of a tax on it and bring back a tamal and bring back a bizcochito to give to me. Again, even the idea of working with the equipment, the proper equipment, we got some cool knives. This one is called Conan and this one is called Cole. Yeah, they've been in my family for quite some time. I'm very careful as to using that equipment and making sure that it comes back. That was Dr. Gonzalez right there. Now, one big cast iron on the bottom right there, that's a two-person cast iron. A person by themselves, it would be very difficult to do. And of course, we have our bread oven there. That was part of our construction. And I think we'll probably fire it up and do some food warming in it as we get ready with our event this year. Okay, so that's when we take the roof off the following day. We have to dig for the meat. So the first layer of sand, we gotta get past that until we get to the burlap bags of meat. And the key element is according to health standards, that meat has to have an internal temperature of 145, a maintained sustained heat 145. And so we're anxious, we're waiting. We have the thermometers. And yes, 165 internal temperature, perfect cooking, if I do say so myself. First taste goes to the most elder of the community. Oh, I guess I would be. Yum, yum, give me some. And again, so this is the part of the celebration. We invite community. We're emphasizing students and Highlands community to come into place. And look at that gravy, wow. Hoping to get you all excited about participating. Some of our invited guests sharing story. And one of the elements that I did mention is the idea within Northern New Mexico culture, we have a concept called La Resolana. The Resolana is that certain area on the west part of your house or the eastern part of your house where you sit to receive the morning sun or you sit to watch the sunset. And that's where you have your meaningful conversations with significant others, family, invited guests, or sometimes you have a microphone. Thank you all for participating. We had some entertainment and invited guests come in as well as part of the last celebration. Another level of blessing. Allegiance. Yep. What? Yeah. That was it, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Welcome. The invitation stands. Please come and help us out. Come and participate. Come and eat. And as you come in and participate, just remember a little bit that bigger idea that this is part of a long-standing tradition. It's community. It's sharing. It's anchored within the idea of place and identity and such. But any comments or questions, or I'll ask some of our collaborators that help out with it, Dr. Carol, if you want to make comment as well, they've been participating for years and helping out with this. But any questions, comments, or suggestions?
Are you gonna have entertainment?
We're gonna have a big stage. Leon, please.
Question, can I do that?
Okay, yeah, no, I thought you wanted to. Yeah, we're gonna have a big stage and I, this afternoon, we have our meeting and we're going to be able to identify. Again, I've been suggesting Shakira for years, but evidently she's out of our.
She's in
Out of
trouble
our
now,
presence.
so maybe.
Well, I wanted to send her a letter and show her some of these images as well, see if that would give some bearing, but yeah, there'll be a stage, a big station. Again, we're gonna use, we do this activity in the cultural park, the seating and where people eat are in Melody Park, the big park that we have there, so. Please.
I just want to be able to, I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I really enjoyed myself and working out the plan, but I learned a lot last Matanza. And I really look up to you and your guidance because this is a lost part of my own culture. And I feel very fortunate to be able to share the spaces with your campus community. So thank you for all of the work. You do. My biggest in moving forward is how do we get students like this active and engaged, because it's a lost culture, lost part of my culture, but also it's a lost part of their culture. So how can we actively engage the campus community, not only our Highland students, but getting our Weston Robertson students involved as well? Because I don't want to see this die out.
Certainly, and like I say, this is an event, but it's situated within a trajectory, a lengthy tradition of land-based culture and agricultural, pastoral history, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one is the curriculum aspect, and the other is the events. So what we're asking is for those of you faculty members that are here, not only help us to promote and make the invitation, but to the degree if you're working with content area and different kind of disciplinary discussions where you could bring this in and make it a more viable discussion or a more clarifying invitation for students to come in and witness and be part of it and not just come and eat. I think that's kind of the idea that oftentimes when we do our marketing and advertisement, it sounds like, well, come in and grab a plate and enjoy yourself. We'll have carnitas and chicharrón and pozole, frijolitos pintos. Robert, please.
Just completing on what Leon said, it's coming and showing up and being willing to participate is all you need. There's no prerequisites, there's no conditions, there's no judgment. So I would echo what he said, that it's important for us to, as you can see from the pictures, we're all getting a little bit older, so it's important for us to engage younger people and more people in the process, but there's no conditions, no judgment. Come show up willing to help, and you will learn.
And I'm going to extend on that and get personal with the invitation. You're also invited to take a course here at Highlands that's been in place for almost 20 years. NHS, Native American Hispano Cultural Studies, NHS 375 is New Mexico Land Grant, Acequia, and Reservation Communities. It's a 16 weeks of discussion, tradition, land-based culture, and such. So that's a spring course. Please consider it. I get to teach that course. It's fun. It's good. It's enlightening. So again, course material and events, and we really have to kind of look at those events. I appreciate Highlands University because they're going in. We're going in this direction, not only because of the support and the direction of the Diversity Council, but out of the President's office, and many faculty members really recognize that I give local knowledge and civic engagement and place-based education activities. So I think more and more we're coming to recognize that that's a value that we could offer here at Highlands, and it's a specific knowledge base that we could offer our students to anchor them in communities, not only here, but wherever they go. Yeah. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your attention.